Hey loves, Paula here with the Health Love Languages. I'm your nurse, your health coach, your author, and your truth-telling big sister. Today's episode is going to be a little different, so please grab whatever emotional beverage you need to help you calm, unlock that jaw, listen in, and just heal today. This is a special edition of the Health Love Languages podcast, part of the Behavioral Intelligence series. And there's a trial happening right now that has captured the attention of millions of people. The Lindsay Clancy trial, there were 3 beautiful children who lost their lives, Cora, Dawson, and Callan, and nothing we discuss today will ever allow us to forget that. There are enormous questions being debated about Lindsay's psychiatric condition, postpartum mental illness, medication, her criminal responsibility, motherhood, her marriage, and what the people around her knew about how badly she was struggling. There are also theories circulating online about her former husband, Patrick Clancy, including allegations about infidelity and their marriage. There seems to be overwhelming proof. I went looking for evidence supporting these claims. I could not verify all of the above in regards to Lindsay or Patrick, so I'm not going to tell you something is true simply because thousands of people on social media believe it. Because I am someone who pays attention to character, patterns, behavior, I have my own opinions, and I will not give those today. Truth and the facts that present themselves right now matter to me because if I'm going to teach you behavioral intelligence, I have to practice it. Behavior is information. Patterns are also information, and questions are not proof. Suspicion is not evidence. This episode is not going to diagnose Lindsay Clancy. It's not going to diagnose Patrick Clancy, and it's not going to try a marriage from behind a microphone. The jury has its job, and today I have mine because the case has brought me back to something I believe we desperately need to talk about. Childhood wounds and what happens to a human being psychologically when the place that is supposed to feel safe doesn't. Now manage this. Now think about this as an adult, and how did we manage it as a child? And if you were a child who reached out for help, for example, you were being abused as a child, didn't always have to be physical. There's mental, emotional, psychological, there's all types of abuse. And it doesn't have to leave a scar on your body. It leaves a scar in your heart and in your head. And if it didn't feel safe and you reached out and you didn't get help, what are you going to repeat as an adult? You're going to try to get help. And if those people around you don't pay attention, don't think you need the help, continue to gaslight you, continue to downplay what you're suffering from, then what is going to happen to you psychologically in that place you're supposed to feel safe? And even more importantly, how do you recognize an emotionally, mentally, or psychologically unsafe person before you build your entire life around them, giving them chance after chance? That is why I do this work. And this one is personal. Before I was a nurse, I was a woman trying to understand what was happening around me. I didn't become a nurse until my 40s. So some of the things I teach you about now, I lived before I had clinical language for them. I knew what confusion felt like before I knew words like hypervigilance. I understood what walking on eggshells felt like before I understood what chronic activation of the stress response could do to a body and a mind. I understood trying to anticipate somebody's mood before I understood why a nervous system starts scanning an environment for threat. And that could be not even a threat of your life, but of your well-being. I understood emotional manipulation before I necessarily knew how to identify it as emotional manipulation. And I also emotionally manipulated people because that is what I learned. I had to unlearn it. I understood something being wrong, something being off, that intuitive discernment long before I understood why it was wrong. And later, nursing gave me another lens. Working in different aspects of nursing gave me an even better lens. Health coaching gave me another, education gave me another, and healing gave me the best lens. Suddenly, I could put language around experiences that once only felt confusing. That's why I'm not teaching you this solely from a textbook or my book. I'm talking to you from both. I'm talking to you from both sides of it. I've lived some of it. I've done some of it. And then I learned the science behind some of what I have lived. And if what I learned the hard way can help another person recognize something 6 months earlier, a year earlier, 10 years earlier, then those lessons don't have to remain pain. And they're definitely not vengeance. They become prevention. Psychological abuse doesn't introduce itself as abuse. It never does. You are blindsided with it. People often imagine an abusive person as obviously abusive, angry, aggressive, controlling from the first date. Maybe they're cruel, even violent, and sometimes they are. But sometimes the beginning looks completely different. They act like a savior. They give you attention, charm, chemistry, constant texting, long phone calls, dates, coming to see you, wanting to know everything about you, talking about the future, telling you how different you are, making you feel extraordinary special. And none of those things by themselves are abuse. Healthy people do those things too. And that is what makes it difficult to determine the difference. You cannot determine character from courtship behavior alone. You have to watch what happens when the courtship stops going exactly the way that they want it to. A lot of women ask me, but what about when he's nice? What is your definition of nice? Is your definition of nice, is it just suit your needs? Or is it truly the definition of what nice is as a person coming from true character? That can make psychological and emotional abuse incredibly confusing. Sometimes he's nice. Actually, sometimes he's absolutely wonderful. He can be funny, affectionate, generous, helpful, thoughtful. He can make you coffee, take you to dinner, call just to hear your voice, hold you when you're crying, show up when you need something, buy thoughtful gifts. He can make you laugh until your stomach hurts, tell you how beautiful you are. He can pray with you, tell you he loves you. And sometimes you genuinely have a really good time together. That's exactly why women can become so confused, because we have this idea that if someone is emotionally or psychologically harmful, they must be harmful all the time. Human beings don't work that way, and unhealthy relationships don't always work that way either. The good doesn't automatically cancel the harm. And this is where I used to get stuck. I would get so stuck on, well, look at everything they're doing. Look how thoughtful they're being. Look at what they're buying me. I could talk myself into being negative about the person and not just focusing on the positive. Maybe I overreacted. Maybe he is changing for me. Maybe I misunderstood him, or maybe that argument wasn't such a big deal like he said. Maybe this is the person he really is, and here's what I've learned. A person's capacity to be kind does not erase their capacity to repeatedly harm you. And if you keep giving them chance after chance, unless they have taken the effort and time away to change almost everything about them, their daily habits, the way they handle things, the way they cope with life, the way they see people. Both can exist in the same human being. Someone can do genuinely thoughtful things and still have deeply unhealthy relationship patterns. But until they change, until they seek the core of why they do what they do and change those patterns, they are going to continue to harm you. It may take a long time in between each episode, but they are going to do it every single time. Someone can love aspects of you and still control you. Someone can make you laugh and still manipulate you. Someone can provide financially and still psychologically destabilize you. Someone can apologize beautifully and repeatedly return to the same behavior, just manipulating you over and over again. And for my Christian people, I want you to hear this part especially. 1 Corinthians 13 does not describe love as nice sometimes. It describes love as patient, kind, not dishonoring, not self-seeking, not easily angered. That's character, not occasional romantic behavior, not attention from time to time, not buying you a lot of things. Flowers are nice, dinner is nice, calling you beautiful is nice. But kindness on Saturday doesn't give someone biblical permission to psychologically dismantle you on Tuesday. So the question can't simply be, is he ever good to me? Ask, what is the overall pattern of this relationship doing to me? And I promise that is not self-seeking, because God reminds us to guard our heart, because everything you do flows from it. And how are you honoring God if you're allowing someone to continuously harm you? When the nice version keeps you waiting for him to come back, happens all the time. This is one of the hardest things to understand when you're living it. After enough good moments, you know that version of him exists. You've met him. You've fallen in love with him. Maybe that's the man you want all the time. So when the relationship becomes cold, confusing, controlling, critical, unpredictable, or emotionally painful, don't think I need to leave. Sometimes you think, how do I get him back? How do I get the sweet version of back? So what do you try to do? You try to change yourself, hoping that he'll come back because he's convinced you that something in you has changed. You want the sweet version, the attentive version, the man from the beginning, the man from last weekend, and the man who helped you, the man who apologized, who promised things would be different. So instead of evaluating the relationship as it currently exists, you start working to restore the version of the relationship you remember. Maybe if you're more patient, maybe if you communicate differently, maybe if you don't bring that subject up, maybe if you give him space, maybe if you forgive this thing that he did, or maybe if you let him see which woman he wants to be with. Maybe if I stop being so sensitive, or if I love him better, the nice version will come back. And when he does, if he does, that relief can feel enormous. You've gotten a little bit of a breadcrumb back from him. The relief can feel like love. Imagine being anxious for days. Just think about this. There's tension, there's withdrawal, conflict, uncertainty. Your body is on alert. And then suddenly, your homeostasis is off. And then suddenly, he's affectionate again. He shows up, gives you attention, he texts, he smiles, he reaches for you. Everything feels back to normal and your body experiences relief. You're back, getting back to that normal homeostasis where you're not feeling like you have to survive. That relief can be incredibly powerful, but relief from distress is not necessarily the same thing as emotional safety. And I talk a lot about emotional safety in my book, The Healed Love Languages. You can find my book on my website, paulalowebsn.com, PaulaLowebsn.com. Healthy relationships are still going to have conflict. They're not perfect. People get irritated. People sometimes need space. Nobody is emotionally available every second of every day, but there should be a baseline underneath it. I am safe with you even when we're upset with each other. You still love me even when we are upset. That is completely different from I finally feel safe because you're being nice again. Totally different. They should be nice all the time, regardless of whether or not you're in a disagreement. But he has such a good heart. I hear this a lot. He has such a good heart. Yeah, maybe he does. And maybe he has wounds. Maybe nobody taught him emotional regulation. Maybe he experienced abandonment or betrayal. Maybe his childhood was awful. Maybe he genuinely loves you. Understanding that can create compassion. Compassion does not require access. Compassion does not equal love. Your wounds do not give you permission to wound me. And he has to take some accountability and ownership in that. If he doesn't, the grace that you extend him needs to have boundaries. Proverbs 4:23 tells us, and I mention this verse a lot in my other podcast, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Your daily life, your work life, your family life. I used to think guarding your heart meant becoming guarded. Don't let anybody in. I don't believe that anymore. Guarding your heart doesn't mean building a wall so high that nobody can love you. It means becoming discerning about who receives access to you. Having a good heart does not mean handing it to someone who repeatedly mishandles it. You can understand somebody. You can pray for somebody. You can forgive somebody and still decide you are not emotionally safe enough to have intimate access to me. And I love that line. You are not emotionally safe enough to have intimate access to me. And intimate access can be not just physical. It's mental, it's emotional, and it's psychological. Just because they can be safe enough with you physically doesn't mean they are emotionally safe enough to handle you mentally, psychologically, and emotionally. Please stop measuring the relationship by its best days. Everybody says focus on the good days. No, you have to look at the bad days too, because the bad days are what is tearing you down. You are losing yourself on those bad days. Don't evaluate a relationship by its highlight reel, by its Facebook post where everybody tries to make it look perfect. The vacation, the Christmases, the gifts, the sex, the anniversary, the flowers, the beautiful dinner, the night you laughed until 2 a.m., the Sunday morning at church. Those moments can be completely real. But look at the baseline. How do you feel most of the time? Peaceful? Do you feel secure? Do you feel respected? Do you feel free to speak or free to disagree? And those two are very important. If you can't speak in your relationship and you can't disagree in your relationship without wondering if you are going to be torn to shreds, are you free to have needs or free to be yourself or frequently confused and anxious, waiting? You're analyzing text, monitoring moods, recovering from conflict, wondering where you stand, waiting for the nice version to return. Your relationship isn't just its best 10%. You have to live inside the other 90%. Nice is wonderful. I mean, I love nice. Please be nice. But I'm not choosing somebody simply because they can be nice. You want somebody who is nice consistently, not somebody who can show up nice when they need something from you. I want consistency. I want accountability. I want emotional safety, honesty. I want respect during conflict, kindness during disappointment, because almost anybody can be loving when everything feels good. I want to know who you are when love requires character when you hear the word no. So don't ask only, is he nice? Ask, is he still safe when he isn't nice? Watch what happens when you say no is another big test to see how these people handle you telling them no. This is where character starts becoming truly visible. What happens when you disagree, when you already have plans, when you aren't ready sexually, when you want time with your friends or you challenge something, when you tell him that hurt me, can he remain respectful while angry? Can he hear no without making you pay for it? Can he tolerate your independence? Can he celebrate your success? And here's a biblical relationship test we don't talk about nearly enough. James 1 tells us to be quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. So watch. Can this person actually listen when you tell them something they don't want to hear? Not wait for their turn to defend themselves, but just stop and listen. Can they slow their anger enough to care about your experience? Because I don't care how many Bible verses somebody posts, how many retreats somebody goes to deal with their behaviors. If you cannot safely tell them they hurt you, something fundamental is missing from their character. What does accountability look like for this other person? Everybody makes mistakes. Nobody's perfect. A healthy relationship doesn't require perfection. It does require repair. You are always going to have to repair a healthy relationship. So stop asking only, is he a good guy? Ask, what happens when he isn't the good guy in the story? Can he say, I did that? I hurt you. I was wrong. I'm sorry. And then does something change? Or do you hear, you're too sensitive? That never happened. You misunderstood. I was joking. You made me angry. You're trying to make me look bad. But what about what you did? And suddenly you're apologizing. Accountability is part of emotional safety, and scripture doesn't give us permission to build relationships on deception either. Ephesians 4 tells believers to put off falsehood and speak truthfully. That matters in relationships. The truth may hurt, but you speak truth out of love. Love cannot require you to surrender reality to keep the peace. Love cannot require you to pretend like something didn't happen, to accept the apology. When someone starts altering your relationship with reality, gaslighting isn't simply disagreeing, but repeated manipulation that causes you to distrust your own perception become profoundly destabilizing. This is a very important point. Repeated manipulation that causes you to distrust your own perception and reality can become profoundly destabilizing. And this is where psychological abuse takes place. You remember what happened. They insist it didn't. You remember the promise. They say it was never made. You know something hurt you. They tell you your reaction proves you're unstable. Eventually, you stop asking, why are they doing this? And start asking, what's wrong with me? You start trying to change yourself. Maybe I'm overreacting or I'm too sensitive. Maybe I'm misunderstood. Maybe I'm difficult or crazy. It's one of their favorite lines. This lady is crazy. Well, let's talk about what you've done to her up until this point. Or you say things like, maybe this is my fault. That's what erosion of self-trust and psychological mental abuse can look like. And truth matters to who? Most importantly, truth matters to God. A relationship that requires distortion, deception, intimidation, or denial to survive isn't becoming healthier simply because two people call themselves Christians. Now, speaking about all this, let's talk about another important aspect of this. What can it do to the brain and the body? And this is where the nurse and health coach in me enters. Your brain and body don't require a bruise to respond to threat. When stress becomes chronic, the body's stress response systems can remain repeatedly activated. You may become hypervigilant. You notice the tone, the facial expression, the text that sounds different, the silence, how long it takes them to respond. You scan, predict, prepare, manage. Over time, chronic psychological stress can be associated with sleep disturbance, anxiety, depressed mood, problems concentrating, trauma symptoms, and emotional dysregulation. Psychological abuse does not automatically cause someone to become violent. Trauma does not make someone dangerous, and postpartum psychosis is a distinct psychiatric emergency. Those distinctions matter, but so does this. Your psychological environment affects you. Relationships don't happen outside your body lives them with you. Another phrase I hear from a lot of women or men, but he or she never hit me. And this is another important sentence that really matters because women sometimes use it as evidence that whatever happened wasn't serious enough. But he never hit me. Oh, honey, he doesn't have to hit you. Did he humiliate you? Did he control you? Did he threaten you? Did he repeatedly betray you and make your reaction the problem because you're not pretty enough or you don't do enough? Did he punish you with withdrawal, or did she monitor you, isolate you, intimidate you, control money, use children against you, make you afraid of telling the truth? Did they make you responsible for keeping them emotionally regulated, make you question your reality? Not every unhealthy behavior equals physical abuse. Context matters. Severity matters, frequency matters, patterns matter, but physical violence isn't the only measurement of psychological safety. And faith doesn't require you to call fear love. This is especially important for any Christian people listening. Sometimes we spiritualize endurance so much that women start believing tolerating almost anything makes them strong and faithful. In 1 John 4:18, the Bible says there is no fear in love, but perfect love drives out fear. That doesn't mean healthy couples never argue. It doesn't mean experiencing anxiety automatically means you're being abused. But if your relationship is constantly organized around fear of the person you're loving, pay attention. Fear of his rejection, fear of saying no, fear of telling the truth, fear of making him angry, fear that affection disappears when you disappoint him, or fear of punishment, fear of humiliation, fear of who he becomes behind closed doors. The emotional environment Scripture describes when it describes love. Colossians 3:19 is remarkably direct in stating that husbands, love your wives and do not be harsh with them. Not, don't be harsh unless she disrespects you. Don't be harsh unless she doesn't submit to you. Don't be harsh unless she makes you angry. Don't be harsh unless you think being the leader gives you permission. It says clearly, do not be harsh with them. Christianity should never become theological camouflage for emotional cruelty. Forgiveness does not erase accountability. Grace does not require denial. And having faith does not mean pretending harmful behavior isn't harmful. Healthy love should leave room for you to have a life, friends, family, career, faith, interests, goals, individuality. But sometimes your world begins getting smaller. Your friend is suddenly a problem. Your sister interferes. Your mom asks too many questions. Your coworker supposedly wants you. Why do you need girls' night? Or why do you need privacy? Sometimes outside relationships genuinely are unhealthy. That's why we watch patterns, is everybody who challenges this person eventually become the enemy. Because isolation doesn't always sound like you can't see your friends. Sometimes someone makes seeing your friends so emotionally expensive that eventually you stop going. Watch what this other person does with your vulnerability. You tell someone about childhood wounds, trauma, insecurities, your ex, your fears that can feel like intimacy, but disclosure isn't automatically intimacy. Trust isn't measured by how much somebody knows about you. They can know a lot. Trust is demonstrated by what they do with what they know. Tell someone you're afraid of abandonment. Tell someone you're afraid of guns. Tell someone you're afraid of frogs. Does leaving become a threat? Do they pull out guns? Do they chase you down with frogs? Tell them you're insecure about your body. Does that become the insult? Tell them an ex called you crazy. Does crazy eventually become their favorite word too? Unsafe people may weaponize it. Access to your wounds is a privilege. Make people earn it. and watch how they talk about their exes. Is every woman crazy? Is every man just jealous? Are they controlling, obsessed, narcissistic, a cheater? And somehow they wandered innocently through 12 consecutive disasters with them, maybe, but I'm listening for I handled that badly or I hurt her. I wasn't emotionally available or I cheated. I should have communicated differently. I've worked on that because if someone can explain everyone else's behavior but has absolutely no insight into their own, pay attention. Eventually, you may become the next chapter of women who mysteriously became crazy after dating me from the person that you're interested in possibly building a future with. Remember that control doesn't always look like control. Things like text me when you get home, sweet, until it becomes, why didn't you answer? Who's there? Send me a picture. Why is he following you? Why did you like that? If you have nothing to hide, give me your password. Again, one behavior doesn't define a person, but watch the direction. Are you becoming more free to be yourself or increasingly required to prove your loyalty to this person? Protection should never slowly become possession. I want you to also, in the beginning, pay attention to the speed. Intensity gives you feelings. Time gives you the data you need to make an educated decision about whether or not this person is capable of providing emotional safety to you physically, mentally, emotionally, psychologically, and spiritually. You need enough time to observe someone under stress, money problems, jealousy, sex, boundaries, alcohol, family pressure, failure, success, disappointment, conflict, being told no or being wrong because you're potentially choosing who will have access to you during pregnancy, postpartum, illness, grief, financial hardship, menopause, aging, loss. Choose somebody whose character becomes safer when life becomes harder, not somebody whose character becomes dangerous when they lose control. Childhood wounds can make unsafe love feel familiar. And how does this happen? Affection was inconsistent when you were a child. Hot and cold behavior from someone can feel compelling, like you need to win it. If you had to earn love, chasing can feel normal. If you grew up monitoring adults' emotions, regulating your partner may feel like love to you. If withdrawal was normal, emotional unavailability may feel familiar to you as well. If home was chaotic, peace can initially feel almost boring. That's why healing asks, why did this feel like love to me? Not, why was I stupid? Not, why didn't I know better? What did I learn love was supposed to feel like? Because sometimes butterflies are butterflies, and sometimes you are anxiety wearing lip gloss. This is why I want women to build their own, have your own skills, your own identity, your own relationships, your own support system, and where possible, your own ability to support yourself, not because receiving provision is wrong, but because marriage shouldn't involve interdependence, because dependence can become leverage in the hands of an unhealthy person. A beautiful house isn't emotional safety. A vacation isn't emotional safety. Expensive gifts are not emotional safety. Being provided for isn't automatically the same thing as being protected. Never become so dependent on what somebody provides that you have to negotiate against your own well-being to keep it. So how can we lower this risk of ending up with somebody who is going to not treat us with kindness? There is no perfect checklist. Some abusive people conceal behavior extremely well, and being abused does not mean somebody failed to recognize the signs. Responsibility for abuse, it belongs to the person choosing abusive behavior, but we can improve our discernment. We can slow down. We can keep the support system, maintain financial awareness, keep our identity, set ordinary boundaries, watch the response, disagree, watch the response, tell them they hurt you, watch the response, observe how they treat people they don't need, observe how they describe former partners. Periodically ask yourself, am I becoming more myself in this relationship or less? Now remember, this isn't an anti-man message. That's never the goal here. Men experience psychological abuse too. Women manipulate, women gaslight, women control, women weaponize vulnerability. Women emotionally abuse men. Behavior doesn't become healthy because a woman does it. And I don't want women learning to distrust men. I want women learning to recognize good men with good character, men who can hear no, men who apologize, men who regulate anger, men who respect independence and protect vulnerability, men whose character matches their public character, men who can say, I was wrong and mean it. Let's come back to the Lindsay Clancy trial, and I want to remain precise. The Lindsay Clancy trial has not established that Patrick Clancy emotionally or psychologically abused Lindsay. I also have not verified trial evidence proving the online allegations that he was having an affair. I'm not going to manufacture facts because they make a compelling story. What this trial has forced us to confront is something different. A person can appear functional while experiencing profound psychiatric distress. And that raises a question. How often do we confuse functioning with wellness? And beyond Lindsay's specific circumstances, what happens when any person who is already psychologically struggling also lives inside a chronically emotionally unsafe environment? Environment matters, sleep matters, stress matters, support matters, mental health, treatment matters, relationships matter. That doesn't mean relational distress causes violence. It doesn't. But psychological environments matter long before someone reaches crisis. Why does this case hit something in me? Because I've looked back at periods of my own life and understood things differently afterward. Times when I thought I was being patient, but I was requiring less. Times when I thought I was keeping the peace, but I was sacrificing mine. Times when I thought I was managing a relationship when I was actually managing somebody else's behavior. I know what it's like to be intelligent, capable, strong, and I still find myself confused by someone I care about. That's why I don't want to teach women only. Leave when it becomes abusive. I want to go earlier before you're trying to figure out how to leave. Who you're choosing, how do they respond to no? How do they handle accountability? What happens when they're angry? How do they speak about women? How do they handle your vulnerability and what happens to your friendships, your confidence, your voice, your peace, and what happens to you? Because sometimes the most important red flag isn't simply what they're doing. It's who you're becoming while you're with them. This is why I do what I do with the Healed Love Languages podcast and why I wrote my book. Eventually, I learned language for experiences I only simply knew hurt, and I refused to waste those experiences. That's why Healed Love Languages podcast exists. I want you to recognize emotional safety before choosing a spouse, accountability before sharing finances, consistency before having children, and control before isolation, manipulation before you're questioning reality, and character before chemistry convinces you not to care about it. That is behavioral intelligence, not paranoia, discernment, spying. So here's what I want you to take from this special edition. Don't just ask, do they love me? Ask, do I feel emotionally safe being loved by you? Don't just ask, would they ever hit me? Ask, can I disagree without being punished? Do they want a future with me? Doesn't their behavior totally demonstrate the character required to build one? Who are they when they're angry, rejected, jealous, embarrassed, disappointed, or wrong? And don't just ask, is he nice? Ask, is he still safe when he isn't nice? And please don't spend your life waiting for somebody to choose you without asking the more important questions. The person who gets extraordinary access to your home, your finances, your children, your vulnerabilities, your dreams, your worst days, your nervous system, your heart, choose accordingly. Proverbs tells us to guard our hearts. I don't believe that means never letting anybody in. I believe part of guarding your heart is learning who could be trusted once they're there. And if you're already listening to this thinking, Paula, this sounds like my relationship, don't use this episode to shame yourself. Information gives you choices. And if you're dating, take your time. Keep your life. Set boundaries, watch behavior, believe consistent patterns, heal the childhood wounds that make chaos feel familiar. Build your own foundation and choose someone whose presence doesn't require you to disappear. Because I don't want you learning how to survive psychological abuse. I want you learning how to recognize emotional safety before you've ever built a life with someone. I lived with some of these questions before I learned the terminology, before I became a nurse, before I understood what prolonged stress could do to the body. And now that I have the experience, the education, the faith, and the language, I'm going to use all of it. If it helps one woman recognize something earlier than I did, if it helps one man recognize that the environment he's creating isn't emotionally safe, if it helps one person stop mistaking control for protection, confusion for chemistry, fear for respect, or anxiety for butterflies, then we're doing something to prevent the next wound. If this episode resonates with you, please share it. There are so many adults surviving life from childhood wounds in relationships, friendships, at work, etc. As adults, please do not gatekeep this information for yourself. Share it with your loved ones and strangers because you never know who may be struggling and who needs to hear this message. I love you. Thank you for allowing me to be a part of your healing journey. I'm honored. Also, please check out my website, paulalowebsn.com, for blogs, community, and other resources.